Hey guys, I'm Uriza. This story is all about what if Naruto accidentally swapped bodies with Ino Yamanaka. When a young Ino tries to use the Shintenshin for the first time on Naruto, something goes wrong and the two find themselves temporarily stuck in the other's body. A series of moments depicting the evolution of their relationship, from acquaintances to friends to something more, all by crossing that metaphorical line created when a boy and a girl forge a bond. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 1, Forming the Line. Yamanaka Ino stares across the playground, searching for a target. The date is October 7th, a mere 2 weeks after her 10th birthday, and she has finally managed to convince her, somewhat overbearing, father to let her go to the park unattended. Under the pretense of wanting to play with her peers in an environment where her dad isn't watching her every move, all Ino really wants is to practice the technique she has been learning. Her father, Yamanaka Inoichi, has been teaching her the most basic of the Yamanaka clan's techniques, Shintenshin no Jutsu, the mind-body switch technique. He has lectured Ino that it is the most fundamental skill their family possesses, the backbone to understanding and learning all of the other Yamanaka clan techniques. And Ino is determined to master it. The theory behind the Shintenshin seems simple enough. By releasing their hold on their own consciousness, the Yamanakas are capable of overshadowing another person's mind. Inoichi has made sure that Ino knows the risks associated with using the mind-body switch unsupported in battle before instructing her in its use. Even then, he has made her promise to not use the technique unsupervised yet. But Ino has something to prove. If she is able to establish herself as a worthwhile kunoichi to be by showing her mastery of her clan's technique, she will be a step ahead of the other girls in her year in the race for Uchiha Sasuke's affections. She already has the looks, shoulder length, platinum blonde hair, pupil-less baby blue eyes, and clothes that reflect her extensive knowledge of current fashion trends. She takes sudden notice of a boy walking somewhat dejectedly towards the swing set. The spiky blonde hair and orange shirt let Ino know that the figure is none other than Uzumaki Naruto, the academy's class clown and general outcast of Konoha. Bingo, she thinks. Naruto is a bit of an enigma. To his peers, he is a third-rate ninja notorious for pulling pranks and not paying attention in class. Ino is honestly a bit surprised that he hasn't yet dropped out of the academy, but his determination to succeed is strong. She can appreciate his tenacity and fight-hard spirit, even if there's little progress to show for his efforts. To the adults, he is a subject spoken of in harsh whispers and pointed glares, often while he sits alone on a swing outside the academy. His pariah status piques Ino's curiosity. Two of the specialties associated with mental manipulations are espionage and interrogation. What she could learn about Naruto, why he trains to be a ninja despite his poor academic standing, why he is an orphan, why everyone seems to avoid him like a plague, firms her decision. She sneaks quietly through the playground, hiding behind a tree not far from the melancholy blonde. From her position, she sees his blue eyes partially lidded with sorrow, and her heart briefly goes out to him. Stealing her resolve, she stretches out her arms, holding her hands out in a rough circle so that the thumbs on each hand touch at the bottom, as do the index and middle fingers at the top. Shintenshin no Jutsu, she whispers, right before her body slumps to the ground. Ino comes to a moment later, opening crystal blue eyes to spy tanned hands clutching the chains of a swing. She admires them momentarily, marveling at how much stronger, if dirtier, they are than her own delicate appendages. The blonde takes notice of the tacky, worn clothes she wears, and she sweeps a hand through the messy blonde spikes Naruto possesses. I did it. Yes. She cheers. She ignores the mixture of stares and glares shot in her direction, too excited in her success to pay them any heed. A loud groan catches her attention, and her head swivels towards where she guesses the source of the sound has originated. Behind a large tree, a foot twitches, an arm stretches, and a body appears to clamber clumsily to its feet. There is a sudden growing knot of dread within Ino's stomach as she watches the scene play out, frozen in the swing. She stares as her own body steps out from the shadow of the tree, and meets the wide-eyed gaze of her own baby blue orbs. Her body's mouth opens and releases a high-pitched scream. Ino's stomach plummets at the shrill sound. Oh! Naruto isn't entirely sure what has happened. He went to the playground because it was a particularly rough day, the week leading up to the festival celebrating the Yondaime Hokage's vanquishing of the Kyuubi. Coincidentally, the same day as his birthday, often sees an increase in the hatred the villagers show him, and he needed to escape from everyone. He remembers rocking rhythmically back and forth on the swing, allowing the repetition of the motion to ease his loneliness, right before blacking out and awakening slumped against a tree. The blonde pariah raises his arms in a stretch and almost instantly notices how different they look compared to what he remembers. The skin is smooth and delicate, the color tone much whiter than he recalls. He doesn't recognize the clothes either, peach-colored shirt with purple trim and the image of a flower in the middle, and green capri pants. Naruto climbs wobbly to his feet, moving out from behind the shelter of the tree with the intent to find some answers. He looks up, his vision latching onto the body dressed in a dark blue t-shirt under a sleeveless orange hoodie, pale green shorts, with a black sweatband on each wrist, the same outfit he dressed himself in earlier. Blonde hair, crystal blue eyes, whisker marks, he finds himself staring at his own body. Confused and mildly scared, Naruto does the only thing he can think of. Even the voice is different, he notices absently through the sound of his own screaming. Ino decides that perhaps mental espionage will have to wait for another time. She focuses on releasing the technique by closing her eyes and trying to cut off her consciousness from Naruto's body as she has been taught. The blonde opens her eyes, expecting to see Naruto, but instead sees only her own body standing in the same spot, mouth open in silent shock, though no longer screaming. She frowns, closes her eyes, and attempts to cancel the Shintenshin again. Blue eyes reopen. No change. Not good. The mind-body switch technique is merely supposed to override another person's awareness, not actually switch them, as she suspects has happened. She isn't entirely sure where she has gone wrong in the application of the technique, but it appears as if Naruto's mind has been placed within the vacancy her body provided upon taking over his body. Mentally, Ino berates herself for her zeal. The traditional method of ending the jutsu is not working, and the blonde knows too little of the Yamanaka clan techniques, or their mishaps, to go about fixing her blunder. She isn't sure of the repercussions of being away from one's body for extended periods of time, nor how long the Shintenshin will last after screwing it up, so she sighs. Now she has to talk to Naruto, to explain everything. Except her fellow blonde is nowhere to be found. Ino curses. Little good can come from having Uzumaki Naruto walking around Konoha in her body. She briefly considers going to her father and explaining the circumstances, but then rejects the idea. Inoichi will undoubtedly severely reprimand her for going against his instruction in the first place, and follow that up with some form of punishment Ino would rather not suffer through. Not to mention she will lose all trust her father has in her and thus be subject to his constant surveillance, something she is working on breaking away from. She will just have to survive until the mind-body switch wears off. With any luck, it'll only be a number of hours, tops. The idea that Naruto doesn't have the slightest idea of how to act like her to avoid rousing suspicion barely even crosses her mind. Unbeknownst to Ino, Naruto is quickly guided into his new persona. After leaving the playground, and his body, behind, he wanders through town in a state of half panic, half wonder. On the one hand, he is clearly in someone else's body, a girl's, if the clothes and voice are any indication. On the other hand, the villagers don't jeer at him. Lost in this strange dilemma, Naruto hardly notices when a head pokes out from a nearby store and asks, "Ino?" He freezes as the rest of the person becomes visible, the man stepping out from the shop and placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "Are you okay, sweetie?" Naruto mentally snaps out of his petrified state. The name Ino chimes familiar bells in his head of a girl in his class constantly arguing with Haruno Sakura over Uchiha Sasuke. Looking up at the man, he is even able to place him as a parent from the academy, blue eyes, sandy blonde hair held in a long ponytail in the back, and stern features that lighten around his daughter. Yeah, fine," he blurts. Internally, he winces at how awkward he sounds. Inoichi doesn't seem to notice. Perhaps he's just very attached to his daughter, and instead smiles at the assurance, steering Naruto into the shop he has appeared from. "Why don't you help me hold down the fort here?" he suggests. Naruto nods, not entirely willing to trust his voice again. He glances around the store, his jaw almost dropping in amazement at the sheer quantity of flowers present in such a small area. Naruto decides to remain uncharacteristically silent during his time in Yamanaka Flowers, scared of saying something inconsistent with Ino's personality. Having only had peripheral interaction with the platinum blonde, he is unsure of how to act to not arouse suspicion. Barring this handicap though, Naruto thoroughly enjoys his experience in his classmate's body. The hatred the villagers always show him is non-existent, and in fact, most of the people who come into the shop smile pleasantly at him and make some comment about how helpful he is. It's a rather surreal experience, one which he is completely unused to, but yearns to experience on a daily basis in his own body. When the sun dips into the horizon, Naruto helps Ino's father close up the shop. He walks beside the older ninja, keeping pace but also making sure not to take the lead as he has no idea where they are going. It takes only 15 minutes of walking to arrive at what Naruto assumes to be the Yamanaka clan compound. The Yamanaka complex is somewhat small, at least in comparison to the Hyuga or Aburame complexes. But to Naruto, who has lived in a tiny apartment for the majority of his life, the area is huge. 20 to 30 multi-story houses sit in a roughly square area whose entranceway is marked by an arch with the Yamanaka clan symbol at the top. Naruto tries not to let the sight of the buildings overwhelm his common sense that Ino has seen this place before, only allowing himself discreet glances at the houses as they pass. Ino's home is situated in what Naruto estimates to be the center of the compound, a simple two-story abode with flower trellises along the windows and a small garden fringing the front porch. Inoichi slips off his shoes upon entering the household and calls out, "Ino and I are home." As Naruto removes his own shoes. "Oh good, I just finished making dinner," speaks a new voice. A woman Naruto assumes to be Ino's mother appears, receiving a peck on the cheek from her husband. She is a stout woman, standing just about 5.5 feet tall, with pale blonde hair a shade darker than Ino's and carrying hazel eyes. There's a geniality about her that makes Naruto instantly comfortable despite his predicament and the strangeness of the day. She hugs Naruto, and his stomach lurches strangely at the contact. Ino's parents go through an opening which Naruto assumes leads to the kitchen while he follows slowly behind, lost in thought. Whatever has happened to him, there is something to be said for how he's currently being treated. Naturally, he knows that it's really Ino receiving the attention, to her parents' knowledge, anyway, but Naruto finds he can't argue with the rarely given affection he has just been bestowed or, from the odors wafting around the kitchen, the call of a full, home-cooked meal. Ramen is still the food of the gods, but there is something nice about having a variety of victuals set out before him to choose from. Naruto waits until the two adults have taken their own food and started eating before grabbing a healthy amount of edibles for himself. He notices the curious looks of both blondes with something, he isn't even sure what, he just wants to eat. Halfway to his mouth, lowering it, he asks, is something wrong? Ino's parents exchange glances. "Well," begins her mother, "we just thought that you were still on a diet. That's the most food you've taken to eat in the past several months." Naruto blinks. "Oh. Well, I'm really hungry and I decided to stop, dieting." The word feels weird on his lips. Despite feeling hunger rather frequently and having to ration how much he eats at times, Naruto can't imagine trying to starve himself by partaking in something as stupid as a diet. And it seems like a crime to waste such perfectly good food. After a moment in which the adults seem to engage in a silent conversation, Inoichi nods and says, "Well, that's good to hear. I never particularly cared for the dieting idea in the first place. Oh, Keiko," he adds, turning to his wife, "I have to leave for a mission tomorrow morning. It might take me a week or so to complete." The other Yamanaka merely nods, and both adults return to their meals. Naruto heaves another mental sigh of relief. I can't believe that worked. Hopefully, with Inoichi gone on a week-long mission, traipsing around as a different person will be easier, lessening the likelihood of getting caught being not Ino. At least until this, whatever it is, wears off. As he shovels more food into his mouth as civilly as he can, a stray thought goes through the blonde's mind. I wonder what Ino's doing in my body. Yamanaka Ino, for what feels like the umpteenth time that day, curses her rashness in using the Shintenshin. Or, at the very least, using it on Uzumaki Naruto. Being trapped within the blonde's body has so far been a rather terrible, if eye-opening, experience. Ino has already been shooed away from a total of 4 different food vendors and restaurants, all accompanied by varying levels of uttered profanities and threats, before extrapolating that the stigma of being Naruto will not allow her entrance into most establishments within Konoha. It's an unusual premise, not only due to the fact that Ino has never been barred from a place before, but because she isn't entirely sure what the spiky-haired boy has done to deserve such treatment. Sure, his reputation as a notorious prankster precedes him, and though much of what he does could be considered juvenile and unnecessary, Ino doesn't believe that the negative attention he receives is fairly warranted as retribution for practical jokes. Her stomach rumbles, and Ino is forcibly reminded of just why she has been going to food establishments in the first place. Hunger struck her suddenly some time ago, leading her to wandering the streets in the hopes of finding a place to get a meal. Unfortunately, Naruto's reputation makes it so that such an undertaking seems virtually impossible. "Oh, Naruto." Ino looks up at the greeting to find that the speaker is an older man wearing a tall chef's hat, smiling at her from behind the countertop of Ichiraku Ramen. She makes her way over to the stand, the aroma of ramen, a food she usually won't touch because of the calories, simply overpowering to her starving body. Not to mention that the old man is the first person to welcome the sight of Naruto rather than repel him. The chef looks down at her as she takes a seat on one of the stools. "What can I get you today?" A bowl of miso ramen, please." "Just one," jokes the older man, turning around to prepare the noodles. Ino doesn't respond. A number of minutes pass before her meal is ready, and Ino tries to use some semblance of manners to not just inhale the ramen. The owner raises an eyebrow at what he finds to be unusual behavior for Naruto, but when Ino finishes the first bowl and asks for a pork ramen next, he merely smiles and sets to work on the bowl. Normally, the girl won't even consider a second helping, but as she is currently inhabiting Naruto's body, there really isn't any harm in eating her fill, especially since she's still hungry. She pauses with a bite of noodles halfway to her lips. Oh no. Naruto clearly has no compunctions about eating until he's full. What sort of damage could he do to her body? If I've gained a single pound when I get back to my body, I'll kill him. Ino departs Ichiraku Ramen 4 bowls later, hunger sated. She wanders into the dim light of the fading sunset as the proprietor bids her a good night and tells her to come back again soon. The disturbing realization that she's still trapped within Naruto's body hours after the botched Shintenshin doesn't fully strike her until she's partway to the Yamanaka clan district. Despite the worrisome situation, Ino's stubbornness prevents her from continuing the trek and asking for her family's help, the consequence of disobeying her father returning to the front of her mind. Determined to wait out the transition, and hoping that going to sleep will perhaps switch back each person's consciousness, Ino begins to walk in the complete opposition direction before realizing she has no idea where Naruto actually lives. Digging through his most recent memories, she discovers the building and recognizes it as one located in the cheaper part of the village. She arrives at her destination a short time later, partially distracted by scrolling through Naruto's short-term memories. His life is surprisingly lonely, and Ino again finds herself feeling sympathetic for him despite how obnoxious he always seems in class. Though it doesn't really excuse what the younger boy does, the blonde suddenly understands the motivation behind his actions. When she enters Naruto's apartment, Ino recoils in slight disgust at the state of the abode. Paint is peeling off the walls, the furniture is in dire need of reupholstering, and clothes and ninja tools are strewn about the common room. Chanting a mantra that her current situation can only last so much longer, she heads into the bedroom, exhausted by the day's events. It's only as she is preparing to change for sleep, and far away in her room, Naruto gets ready to do the same, when she realizes exactly what being in Naruto's body implies for changing clothes and bathing. The night is long and awkward for both children. The next morning, Naruto arrives at the academy in a rather subdued mood. Ino's father has already departed for his mission, and Naruto had to feign sleep. His rest was fitful at best, in an effort to avoid any unwanted scrutiny when the older man came to check on him. With him gone, Naruto believes it'll be easier to pass as his female classmate, despite how strange it is to live the life of his fellow blonde. Girls, he has discovered while getting changed, have a seemingly unnecessary amount of clothes. Or perhaps it is a quality only Ino possesses. He's not sure if he can function properly in Ino's body, but he knows he has to try. Otherwise, he'll be forced to face the potential consequences associated with being discovered as an imposter. When he enters the classroom, his eyes immediately dart to Sasuke and his face settles into a scowl. If Sasuke notices the expression, he doesn't say anything, but Sakura stomps up to him and crosses her arms over her chest. "Don't glare at Sasuke-kun like that, Ino pig," she reprimands. "You look like Naruto baka." Then she smirks. "Have you finally decided to give up on Sasuke-kun and let me have him?" Naruto snorts. "Like I'd ever like that bass MMPH. She doesn't know what she's saying," says a voice Naruto recognizes as his own. "I need to speak to Ino a moment, for Sakura." Naruto finds himself dragged forcibly from the room and out into the hallway, leaving the remainder of the class to gossip about when Uzumaki Naruto became so chummy with Yamanaka Ino. Naruto is shoved up against the wall, and Ino finally removes her hand from his mouth to stick a finger threateningly at his nose. The absurdity of watching his body loom over him momentarily distracts him from Ino's ire. "What do you think you're doing?" she hisses. "I was giving Sasuke team what he deserves." "Thinks he's so cool," he mutters. "No." She practically screeches, and he notices that his voice is grating on his nerves. "Is that what I always sound like?" he wonders. Naruto watches as Ino takes a deep, calming breath in his body and opens crystal blue eyes. "Look, we need to pretend to be each other until the Shintenshin wears off." "The what?" Ino returns Naruto's blank stare before burying her forehead in her palm with a loud smack. Naruto's perturbation at watching his own body go through all these strange motions while not under his control only increases, and he misses Ino mutter something unflattering about him. "This," she says, motioning with one hand between the two of them, "was caused by an accident with my Shintenshin no jutsu. It should wear off soon, I hope," she adds under her breath. Naruto considers that explanation for a moment before asking, "Wait, why do you use it on me?" "That's not important," she dismisses, unwilling to divulge the details. "Just know that we need to act like the other person until this corrects itself. Which means that you have to be nice to Sasuke-kun." Naruto growls, but the fierce look in Ino's eyes, "My eyes," he reminds himself, forces him to rethink going against his classmates' wishes. "Fine, but then you have to be nice to Sakura-chan." Ino is silent for a moment before nodding her head in agreement. "I can do that. But you better not screw up my chances with Sasuke-kun." Then she leans in so close their noses are almost touching. "And if I've gained a single pound when I return to my body, I will hunt you down and kill you." Shikamaru ambles by at that moment, hands in his pockets. He watches Ino nod in terrified understanding, and his dark eyes narrow as Naruto stomps into the classroom in a distinctly angry Ino-like fashion, merely waving back confusedly when Ino waves a hesitant greeting to him. Weird, he thinks, but just shrugs and follows Ino into class. It's not his business what's going on. October 10th seems to take forever to arrive, and despite the mishaps of the previous several days, Naruto, for the first time ever, looks forward to the festival. The students have the day off from school, which the blonde finds himself immensely thankful for. Pretending to be interested in Sasuke, fawning over him was absolutely out of the question, and keeping Sakura at arm's length has been a rather trying experience. That didn't even take into account all the glares Ino subtly shot him whenever he was unable to answer a question correctly. Barring his time spent at the academy, however, Naruto found that he could get used to being in Ino's body, as terrifying a thought as being a girl for who knew how long was. Most of his free time has been spent with Ino's mom at Yamanaka Flowers, taking care of the plants and smiling politely at the customers who came in. It was a bit more difficult to remain genial when someone who was particularly mean to him in the past came by, but Naruto weathered the storm with aplomb. After his time at the shop, mother and daughter went home and had a nice meal, followed immediately by Naruto weighing himself to make sure Ino won't kill him. Girls were scary when they were mad. Looking through Ino's closet for a nice kimono to wear, Naruto wonders for not the first time what happened to his parents. Every moment spent in the older Yamanaka's company causes him to think that this is what his life should have been like. The fact that this will be his best birthday to date, and he is celebrating it in another person's body, disheartens the blonde slightly. "What I won't give for a mom." He removes Ino's robe from his body and quickly slips into a lavender kimono with white flowers on it, ignoring the fact that the girl's body is all but on display for him. It is easy enough to not focus on this fact after having bathed several times already. Simply ignoring the knowledge that he is a naked girl is the preferable option to avoid any additional awkwardness this situation has already caused. Naruto leaves the Yamanaka compound and wanders towards the festivities celebrating his hero's success over the demonic nine-tailed fox. It's his first time going, as the villagers tended to chase him away in previous years, and he is excited to see what sort of activities there are to partake in. Colored lights make the atmosphere of the festival upbeat, matching the hawking of game managers and salesmen alike. Naruto purchases some deifuku, mochi stuffed with bean paste, and wanders amongst all the different stalls, chewing slowly on his treat. He stops at the back of a crowd gathered around a small stage, where two ninja are reenacting an embellished battle between the Yondaime Hokage and the Kyuubi. A tug on his elbow diverts his attention, and he swings around to find Ino standing behind him. His body is dressed in a blue yukata with an orange obi tied around the waist, though Naruto is honestly more surprised to see Ino at the festival than he is at the sight of the formal clothing he has never gotten to wear before. "How'd you get in here?" he asks, dragging Ino away from the crowd. She smirks in response. "Snuck in." Naruto deflates a little, mildly put out that Ino has adjusted so easily to his body, or more precisely, his life. He brings a deifuku to his lips, then realizes whose company and body he's in and winces. Want one?" he offers. "Sorry, I've just never." "No," interrupts Ino. "I mean," she continues quietly, "it's alright. You should enjoy yourself, on your birthday." Naruto starts at that and almost drops his treat. Aside from Iruka, the Hokage, and the Ichirakus, Ino's admission is the first acknowledgement by anyone else ever that today is his birthday. "How do you know?" "I looked through your memories," she admits in the same quiet voice, sounding almost ashamed. Oh. In hindsight, Ino feels quite bad for invading Naruto's privacy, despite that being her original intention when activating the Shintenshin. In sifting through her fellow blonde's past, Ino has come to the rather sad conclusion that Naruto's life hasn't been anything even resembling happy. Beatings at the hands of bullies in the orphanage, and sometimes adults on the streets, social isolation within the village he loves, too many days and nights of hunger to count. And at the end of the day, there is no one at home for Naruto to be comforted by. Not seeing her parents for the past several days has been difficult enough. Ino can't even imagine what lacking a parent's affection must feel like on a permanent basis. Naruto's life is sad and lonely, and Ino is startled to realize that she wants to prevent him from having to live that way anymore. A hand clasping hers draws Ino from her musing. "Come on," urges Naruto. Wait. Where are we going?" Ino watches her body's mouth break into a brilliant smile, one which she has only seen once or twice in Naruto's memories. It's an expression that she wishes she can see over and over again on the face it truly belongs, whisker-like markings stretched wide and crystal blue eyes shining with happiness. "To celebrate," he exclaims profoundly, dragging her off to play some games. Throughout the rest of the night, whispers follow the pair of children around, murmurings of how the demon child has corrupted the sweet Yamanaka girl, and why is he even at the festival at all, he should be removed. Both 10-year-olds ignore them, and it isn't until much later, as they are getting ready for bed, that they realize they have just had the best night of their lives. Ino wakes up the next morning in her own bed in the Yamanaka clan complex. She feels her hair, arms, and legs before getting up and rushing to the mirror to ascertain that her mind isn't playing tricks on her. Concluding that the technique has broken, how, she doesn't know, but neither does she particularly care, she rushes down the stairs and skids into the kitchen, where her father is sitting at the table, writing something. He glances up at her entrance and smiles. "Hi sweetie. I finished my mission a little early, so I came back. Sorry I missed the festival, I know we usually go together." "Oh, that's okay, Daddy," she replies, chalking up the mission as something her father embarked on while Naruto was in her body. She's also incredibly thankful that Inoichi wasn't home to watch her every move. There's no telling how Naruto would have bungled. Naruto. Her thoughts turn to her fellow blonde and how he must be feeling, all alone in his ramshackle apartment, nothing to eat but ramen, not that he will complain about that. Ah, Daddy. Hmm. Is it okay if a friend comes over for dinner tonight? Chapter 2, Thickening the Line. Yamanaka Inoichi is mildly confused to see a small male child with bright yellow hair standing next to his daughter on the doorstep of their house. The boy's eyes are averted, almost as if he's afraid of Inoichi, which, considering the gall it takes to come home alongside his daughter, is probably a correct attitude to take. Inoichi recognizes him as Uzumaki Naruto, container of the Kyuubi, and most definitely not Haruno Sakura, the girl he has expected to accompany Ino home upon her asking for a dinner guest earlier. In all honesty, Inoichi isn't quite sure what to think about this strange development. He has no issue with the boy, his faith in the Yondaime's sealing capabilities is strong, but the way Naruto has portrayed himself to the village makes the older male a bit apprehensive to allow him entrance into his house. Still, Ino has requested to have the younger boy over for a meal, and Inoichi finds it difficult to resist granting his daughter such a simple entreaty. He steps aside and allows the children to come through the door, Ino practically pulling Naruto into the Yamanaka home. As part of Konoha's intelligence division, and more importantly, as a Yamanaka, Inoichi is trained to look for subtle psychological quirks. Eyes darting back and forth, twitches in the skin of the face, twiddling fingers, each motion is a tick that sends out a flare to a trained professional. Naruto's actions throughout the night are at odds with the personality he displays in the village. Despite managing to keep up conversation with Ino, and answering all of Keiko's questions, Naruto appears quiet and subdued during the meal, and he seems to avoid looking anyone directly in the eyes. Inoichi knows that such behavior is usually indicative of someone who is hiding something or unused to human contact, and while the latter makes sense given how the villagers treat him, Naruto is not someone who shies away from the people who disrespect him. The older Yamanaka almost wants to say that the Jinchuriki is trying to make a good impression on his family, except that he can't figure out if there is a deeper reason for doing so other than for its own sake. Naruto bows politely to Inoichi at the end of the night and thanks him in a quiet voice before departing for his home. The older male silently watches him depart, musing over the boy's actions in his mind. He joins his wife in the kitchen after a moment and begins to assist her in cleaning the dishes. "What did you make of that?" he asks. Keiko shoots him a curious look. "What do you mean?" Inoichi blinks and then settles his face into a neutral expression. "Ino just invited a boy over, Uzumaki Naruto, no less." He raises an eyebrow. "You don't have anything to say about that?" His wife shakes her head as a small grin finds its way upon her lips. "You're so overprotective." "They're 10, it doesn't mean anything. Shikamaru and Choji are here all the time with Shikaku and Choza and you don't react like this. Besides, he was really quite sweet. A little shy maybe, but I don't think he deserves even half of the treatment he receives. He ate like he'd never had a good, home-cooked meal before." Inoichi doesn't respond right away, and Keiko sighs. "You were analyzing him, weren't you?" "Well, Oh, for heaven's sake, Inoichi. He's not a prisoner, he's just a young boy. He looked so sad, he must be terribly lonely. We should have him around more often." "I don't." "Yamanaka Inoichi," Keiko says sternly, "Naruto is a child who got dealt a bad hand in life, and more importantly, it looks like he's Ino's friend. When he is in this house, you will treat him as such, am I clear?" "Yes, dear. You didn't have to do that." Ino frowns. It's the next morning, and Ino has intercepted Naruto on his way to the academy. "Didn't you have a good time?" "Well, yeah, but, I mean, people don't like me," he finally manages. "And, I don't really have any friends. I just don't understand why you did it. Shouldn't you want nothing to do with me now?" Ino isn't quite sure how to answer him. "Somehow, I feel bad for you," doesn't seem like the appropriate response even if it is true. "When I was in your body," she replies slowly, working through her words, "I understood a little about why you do what you do. And, I don't think that anyone should have to live that kind of life." "It was nice," Naruto whispers after a moment, "having a family, I mean. Your parents are really nice, though your dad was a little scary last night." The platinum blonde giggles lightly. "Yeah, Daddy can be a bit overbearing when it comes to my decisions about my friends." Naruto halts suddenly, and it takes Ino a couple of steps to become aware that her fellow blonde is not beside her. She turns around to find the boy standing motionless, his bright blue eyes wide with shock. "I'm your friend." Ino reviews her words in her head and realizes that she has, in fact, stated as such. Sure, why wouldn't we be? Somehow, the admission doesn't feel as weird on her tongue as she would have imagined several days ago. Perhaps it's because of the botched mind-body switch technique and the images from Naruto's memories that she can't get out of her head, but Ino feels like she needs to right the injustices that Naruto has lived with his entire life. Befriending him seems like a good start. "Thank you," he murmurs. She offers him a smile as they continue their walk to the academy. The building is within sight when a thought occurs to the Yamanaka, and she decides to screw with Naruto a little. "You know, you had quite a bit to eat last night." He agrees absently, too happy at the new friendship to keep track of where the conversation is heading. "Your mom's an amazing cook. Think she'd make me ramen if I asked?" "Maybe." A strange glint shines in Ino's baby blue eyes. "Did you eat like that when you were in my body?" "Yeah," Naruto gulps as he realizes what he has just admitted. No, of course not." Ino fixes him with a gimlet look, and the spiky-haired blonde hangs his head, knowing he's been found out. "Okay, yeah, I did, but I was really hungry. And I tried to make sure that you didn't gain any weight." "Are you mad?" She releases the mock glare and sighs theatrically. "No, I suppose I can let this slide." Naruto heaves a breath of relief, immensely glad he hasn't already screwed up this bond. "Okay, good. You know, I don't think you need to worry about dieting, anyway. Ninja work out a lot, so it's not like you'll gain weight. I think it's too early in our friendship for you to be giving me advice about my life. Besides," she proclaims, "I need to look my best for Sasuke-kun. I don't see why you like that stuck-up bastard. I don't expect you to understand." She pauses, then continues in a sickly sweet voice, "Maybe you'd see it if you were a little nicer to him." Naruto shoots her a foxy grin. "I think it's too early in our friendship for you to be giving me advice about my life," he parrots. She pouts slightly before both of them break into laughter. It is the beginning of the strangest and strongest relationship either of them will ever partake in. Inoichi stands at attention before the third Hokage's desk, waiting for the old man to indicate that he is allowed to speak. Sarutobi Hiruzen lights his pipe and takes a few puffs. "What can I do for you, Inoichi?" "Well, Hokage-sama, I've come here today to discuss Uzumaki Naruto." Hiruzen sighs. "And what has Naruto-kun done now?" A small furrow forms between Inoichi's brows. "Nothing. I would actually like to request that my wife and I be allowed to adopt him." The Hokage's eyebrows both rise. "Really? How unexpected. Would you enlighten me as to what brought you to this decision?" "As you may or may not be aware, Naruto has been coming around my home for several weeks now as a friend of my daughter's." Hiruzen nods, indicating that he knows this fact and that Inoichi can continue. "Well, in that time, my wife has also become quite taken with him, and I must admit that he has had a good influence on Ino. In certain aspects, anyway," he corrects himself. "More importantly, I believe that Ino's friendship has had a positive effect on Naruto's mental development, and will continue to do so assuming they have continued interaction. I also think that an environment where he is acknowledged as part of a family might also temper some of his more notorious actions around the village." Hiruzen removes his pipe and taps it against his desk several times, a look of deep concentration on his face. Finally, he says, "You present good points, Inoichi. Unfortunately, I can't allow you to undertake such action. As the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Naruto carries a great deal of power, and relegating him to any one clan could be looked at by the others as favoritism and unfair treatment." "With all due respect, Hokage-sama," Inoichi interjects, straightening marginally, "the boy is the one who is unfairly mistreated, and I am not suggesting this course of action from the political perspective of a clan head." The Hokage holds up a hand to forestall the rest of the Yamanaka's argument. "I was not suggesting that you were. But you must look at it as one of the other clans, or Danzo might." Inoichi scowls at the mention of the man's name but makes no other motion. He is confused when a smile flits across the third's face. Uzumaki Naruto must remain just that. That said, if you wish to provide accommodations and a hospitable environment for a friend of your family's, well, I see no reason to disallow this. Inoichi realizes, adopting him without an official adoption. Quite a loophole. He bows to the aging village leader. Understood. Thank you for your time, Hokage-sama. Anytime, Inoichi. That night, when the Yamanaka clan head springs the news that Naruto will be informally adopted into their household, the blonde boy's eyes well up with tears. Emotional, he jumps to the older male's side and hugs him around the waist, thanking him profusely and making promises to be good. Keiko catches her husband's eye and smiles at him, glad that everything has worked out. Naruto finally releases him and rushes over to Ino. Watching the two children interact with each other, Inoichi knows he has made a good decision. More than 2 years pass, during which Naruto moves into the Yamanaka household and becomes integrated into the family. Ino and Naruto develop a pseudo-sibling bond, with the female blonde assuming a sort of guardian role. Naruto doesn't quite think it's completely necessary, but whenever Ino returns the unwarranted glares of the villagers, he gets a bubbly feeling of warmth that someone is willing to watch out and stand up for him. When Inoichi finally deems her ready, Ino begs Naruto to be her Shintenshin test subject, and though memories of the first mishap make him hesitant, he finally agrees to help, feeling he owes it to her. Thankfully, under Inoichi's guidance, there are no other mishaps, and Naruto quickly gets used to the sensation of having his consciousness overridden by Ino as she practices the timing of the technique. His skills increase alongside Ino's, his grades rising slightly with someone willing to help him study and understand topics. He understands that he'll never be at the top of the class, but not being at the very bottom is a good feeling. Unfortunately, his inability to produce a bunshin persists even with Ino's assistance, something which confounds the female blonde. Their time at the academy is initially riddled with the teasing of their classmates as they spend more and more time together. Both children ignore the mocking of their peers, as Naruto has always done, and which Ino learns to do over time, and Naruto even grows closer to Nara Shikamaru and Akimichi Choji as a result of the connection between their families and Ino's. Naruto's and Ino's friendship grows stronger and their lives become more entwined as their days at the academy approach an end. When the day of graduation dawns, Inoichi and Keiko wish both children luck and then send them on their way. Naruto is so distraught when he fails the graduation exam that he avoids meeting up with Ino after class to celebrate her success. When Mizuki offers him an alternate means of passing, one which doesn't involve having to perform the clone technique, Naruto jumps on the opportunity without thinking of the repercussions. He's mildly surprised when his day continues uninterrupted by Ino, but shrugs it off as his friend knowing he wants to be left alone. Besides, it's better for him to be in solitude so that he can plan on how to obtain the Scroll of Seals. It isn't until much later that night, after Iruka finds him learning Kagebunshin no Jutsu and explains the situation, that Naruto realizes he's made a grievous error. The revelation that he is the container of the nine-tailed demon fox is a huge surprise, though it finally answers the burning question of why the villagers seem to hate him so much. Though it also raises questions about why exactly the Yamanaka family decided to take care of him all this time. He arrives back at the Yamanaka complex at a little past 6 in the morning. Inoichi is already awake, for what reason, Naruto doesn't know, and sipping tea at the kitchen table, he moves the chair across from him out with his leg and simultaneously pushes forward a second cup of the steaming liquid. As Naruto takes a seat and wraps his hands around the cup, Inoichi's cerulean eyes flicker to rest on the boy's forehead protector. "Would you like to talk about it?" prompts the older man after a sip of tea. There is a long silence during which Naruto is unusually somber, eyes gazing steadfastly at the table. Then he whispers, "Did you know?" Inoichi arches one sandy blonde eyebrow. "Did I know what?" He asks in that manner. Naruto knows the Yamanaka is aware of what the question is, but wants the other person to specify it regardless. "When you adopted me, did you know that you were really adopting the Kyuubi?" clarifies the blonde, a slight bitterness coloring adopted. Inoichi can't decide if it's because the adoption is unofficial or if it's due to residual emotions from the discovery of the Kyuubi. The older man frowns, but makes no other discernible expression. "I was aware that you contained the fox, yes." "Then why did you?" "Naruto, you must understand, Inoichi interrupts, that you and the Kyuubi are two separate entities. The Kyuubi was a terrifying force to behold, yes, but I have faith in the Yondaime's sealing abilities. However, many people are unable to forget the fear that gripped them when the fox attacked, and that is why they treat you so poorly. I admit that I had some reservations when Ino brought you home. Here Naruto's face adopts a stricken expression, but I also have faith in my daughter's judgment. And, he finishes, leaning forward so Naruto understands how serious he is, I don't regret bringing you into this family. Inoichi leans back in his chair. Of course, in lieu of this development, I'd have to say that your analytical abilities could use a bit of polishing. Did you really think sneaking into the Hokage's house and stealing the scroll of seals was a good idea? Naruto mumbles something incomprehensible, but the older male is already aware of some of the details behind the thieving attempt, courtesy of the Hokage. I know it wasn't your idea, the Yamanaka continues gently, but maybe next time you should think about the repercussions of following such strange orders. Inoichi stands up and moves around the table to place a hand on Naruto's shoulder. That said, I'm very proud of your graduation to Genin. Naruto swings his gaze up to stare at his father figure with wide eyes. Inoichi graces him with a smile. We'll have to celebrate properly later. I've got some work to take care of, and you should get some rest. As Inoichi prepares to leave the house to interrogate Mizuki, Naruto asks, does Ino-chan know? No. No one in your generation is aware of what you possess, and it's entirely up to you whether you wish to tell her. Then he's gone. Naruto sits at the table for a while longer, mulling over his thoughts. It's been a long night and he's not sure if he's thinking clearly enough to make such a big decision about the Kyuubi at this point in time. He heads up the stairs, determined to get some sleep, but a quiet Naruto draws his attention at the top of the staircase. What's going on? Ino is standing just outside her bedroom door in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Naruto smiles weakly at how innocent she looks, and somehow the decision to not inform her of his burden is made for him quite easily. Taking away that innocence with such a mind-shattering revelation just seems wrong. Nothing, Ino-chan, he reassures her. I just passed a different graduation exam. Look. He proclaims, thumbing at his forehead protector. The Yamanaka girl blinks and nods. Oh. Okay then. Well, I'm going back to sleep. Night. Night, he echoes, even though it's dawn. Then he goes to his room and crawls into bed, determined to get a couple hours of rest. When Ino hears the full story, minus some details regarding the fox, of how Naruto has graduated later that morning, she immediately berates him for his rashness and stupidity while he just sits and takes the verbal onslaught. Yes, he thinks, it's far better to keep their friendship the way it is without introducing such a messy concept as him being the container of the Kyuubi. Things are fine just the way they are. After passing on the answers to the first test of the Chunin exams to Shikamaru and Choji via the Shintenshin, Ino sits in her spot and taps her pencil against the table unsurely. The platinum blonde is engaged in a fierce mental debate about whether or not she should help her fellow blonde. The test rules don't specifically prohibit cheating, but the penalty for getting caught is nothing to sneeze at, especially since the participants are unaware of how many times the proctors have caught them. Her first priority is to her team and making sure that they pass. Infiltration, after all, is one of her clan's specialties. But now that they're all set up with the test answers, barring the 10th question, her concern for her friend has time to take root in her mind. Naruto is a notoriously bad test taker, and considering the difficulty of the questions, there is little doubt in Ino's mind that her fellow blonde is completely lost. In addition, his collection of skills, limited though they are, don't lend to the field of espionage, leaving him woefully inadequate at cheating. The combination of those factors means that Naruto is more than likely going to fail the test. Plus, Naruto's failure will lead to Sasuke's failure, and that's just unacceptable, even as a small voice says that using Sasuke as an excuse to help Naruto is just a cop-out. Not to mention that Naruto's last failed test resulted in his theft of the Scroll of Seals. It truly was a shame that they didn't end up on the same team. Ino's conundrum wouldn't even exist if that was the case. Unfortunately, both blondes went into the classroom on the day of team assignments knowing that Ino was practically guaranteed to be assigned Shikamaru and Choji as teammates. Then again, she thinks, after hearing the story of Team 7's A-ranked mission to the Land of Waves. Asuma doesn't seem like so bad a teacher, despite his laid-back personality. Especially with how much Naruto complains about Kakashi's teaching skills. Naruto can handle himself, Ino convinces herself. He doesn't need me looking over his shoulder all the time. Ah hell, who am I kidding? I know I'm gonna help him. Ino moves her hands into the appropriate seal and fires her consciousness into her friend's body. She rolls crystal blue eyes when she spies that Naruto's paper is unsurprisingly blank. Called it. He is so predictable. Naruto's pencil scribbles across the paper as Ino recalls the answers she has stolen from Sakura. At the end of the page, Ino jots a short note so that Naruto won't freak out at his suddenly filled-in paper and then circles it so it stands out. Then she releases the technique. From her spot several rows back, Ino watches Naruto's body jerk as his consciousness returns to him. Thankfully, due to years of practicing the mind-body switch on him, the spiky-haired blonde seems to recognize what has happened to him, and after reading the note, gives an imperceptible nod to show Ino his appreciation. When the proctor reveals the extra rules of the 10th question, Ino just sits back and relaxes. Additional rules be damned, no matter what the last question is, the platinum blonde is confident in her ability to pass it. As genin start to flow out of the classroom, Ino waits until the final question is handed out, wondering what she can convince Naruto to do as repayment for her help on the test. Ino watches as Sakura, her former friend turned rival, stands up to the team of Otonin all by herself. Despite being overwhelmingly outclassed, the pink-haired girl is defending the hidey hole where Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto lie unconscious as if her life depends on it. All things considered, it probably does. Ino, what do you want to do? Shikamaru asks. Her team is crouched in the bushes nearby, and though she knows that Choji isn't big on fighting and Shikamaru is reluctant to do any sort of work, both won't hesitate to back her up if she decides to intervene. But despite the history that she shares with Sakura, Ino is more concerned about Naruto's status. The Sound Shinobi seem to have little regard for the lives of anyone in their way, and Naruto is incapacitated and unlikely to wake up anytime soon. Faced with the reality that her rival, friend, and crush might die, Ino's mind flickers back to her time spent with all of them. Strangely enough, or perhaps not, considering her relationship with the three preteens, her memories focus most on her time with Naruto, the biggest influence in her life ever since the body-switching incident. With a jolt, Ino reaches the startling conclusion that Naruto isn't simply a friend, but her best friend, the person with whom she's interacted with most and best for more than 2 years, and there's no one who can replace him in her life. It's this thought that prompts her to leap out of the bushes with Shikamaru at her side, Koji's scarf in his grip. Later, after Sasuke has awakened surrounded in a strange chakra which he has used to thrash the team from the hidden sound, Ino rushes over to Naruto's unconscious form while her teammates go to help Rock Lee. Finding herself with no other recourse, she hits her friend over the head with her fist. Naruto sits up immediately and rubs the spot where she's whacked him, letting out a confused, "Wah." As he comes to. His expression grows even more perplexed when Ino throws her arms around his neck and hugs him with all her strength. Ino-chan. I'm glad you're okay, she admits, pulling back to look at him. Then her fist rockets towards his head again, and he's busy clutching a new knot in pain. What the hell's the matter with you? Sorry, he offers, visibly confused. What happened here? He looks around, and Ino watches his eyes land on Sakura. Why's Sakura-chan's hair so short? Ino's heart clenches briefly at the endearing way he addresses Sakura, just a little differently from how he says her own name. His eyes return to her and narrow slightly at the trail of red dribbling from her mouth. Why are you bleeding, Ino-chan? He noticed? And nothing, she stammers, not wanting to relieve the viciousness of the Otonin. I'm going to go fix Sakura's hair, she needs all the help she can get in attracting Sasuke-kun's attention. You stay here and just relax. Naruto nods uncertainly. Okay. Oh, Ino adds as she begins to walk away, and I really am glad that you're alright. Naruto watches the fight between Ino and Sakura quietly, unsure if he should say anything to cheer on either combatant. This is the longest preliminary match so far, and while most of the other spectators believe that the battlers are evenly matched due to their determination to win, Naruto isn't willing to buy into their theory quite yet. Sakura, while arguably the smartest genin of their age group, is not the most proficient hand-to-hand fighter. On the other hand, Ino is technically the best student of their class, graduating from the academy with the best grades. Naruto's not stupid enough to believe such a title means anything after spending months training under different Jonin sensei, but as most of his time is spent in the company of either Ino or Sakura, and Sasuke, he also has a far better grasp of their comparative abilities than any of the other observers present. He is absolutely shocked when Ino pulls out a kunai and slices off the long ponytail she's been growing since before they even met. Seeing the lengths the other blonde is willing to go to in order to win this match confirms for Naruto that the playing field isn't as even as everyone else assumes. However, he continues to keep his mouth shut as Kakashi and Asuma discuss the fight. Given separate fights against any other opponent, Naruto is sure he would root for both Sakura and Ino to win their respective matches. But the problem is that they are competing against each other, and Naruto is torn between his loyalty to his teammate, and crush, and his deep friendship with Ino. It just doesn't seem fair to spur one on to beat the other when both of them are important to him in different ways. A small, almost traitorous voice in the back of his head, the one that silently resents Sakura's unending and focused fixation with Sasuke, niggles that he hopes Ino wins. It's nothing against Sakura, but Ino has done more for him in his short life than the pink-haired girl has, no matter how high a pedestal Naruto has placed her on. And after the concern Ino showed him in the Forest of Death, physical abuse aside, Naruto can tell Ino was scared for him. He thinks that maybe the blonde girl deserves his support more than his teammate does. More than his bonds with either of his teammates, his connection with Ino has been strong for a long time. She's his best friend. When Ino traps Sakura's feet with her hair and activates the Shintenshin, Naruto finally finds himself in agreement with Asuma's analysis. The fight is over. Naruto allows a hidden smile to spread across his features as Ino raises Sakura's hand and forfeits in her name. "I'm proud of you, Ino-chan." Ino resists the urge to rush straight for Konoha Hospital when news of the botched mission to retrieve Sasuke reaches her ears. Instead, she walks calmly beside Sakura, whose friendship she has started to rekindle, towards the medical facility and requests Koji's room number upon entering so she can go check up on her chubby teammate, whose injuries are most severe. She makes sure to note Naruto's room when Sakura asks for it so she can go visit her best friend afterwards. She finds Koji's father sitting on a bench outside the operating room where her teammate is. Choza offers her a smile when she appears. Tsunade-sama says he'll make a full recovery, he assures her. It's a good thing she returned to Konoha, otherwise. Ino lets the older man trail off, knowing that she's also uncomfortable with acknowledging that without Tsunade, they most likely would have lost Choji. She's suddenly very anxious to go check on Naruto, but knows that it's rude to do so without completing her first objective. "Can we see him?" Choza shakes his head. "Not yet. He still hasn't awoken from using the 3 colored pills." "Well, please let me know when he can have visitors." When the Akimichi clan head nods in understanding, Ino moves down the hallway as fast as is acceptable. She arrives at the blonde's room just as Sakura is leaving, surreptitiously wiping tears from her eyes. "Stupid Naruto," mutters the pink-haired girl without venom before departing. As Ino enters the room, she finds herself mentally echoing the sentiment. Naruto is more bandages than skin, his blue eyes gazing morosely at the crisp linen of his bed. Shikamaru sits by his feet, hands clasped together and left index finger in a splint. "Ino," the dark-haired boy acknowledges. Naruto's head shoots up at the sound of her name, and his blue eyes widen marginally when they land on her. Shikamaru's dark eyes flicker between the two blondes. "I'll leave you two alone," he says before getting up and leaving. Neither genin knows quite what to say, so they remain silent, Ino staring at Naruto's mummified form while Naruto returns his despondent gaze to the sheets. He clenches the linen in his hands. "Ino-chan," he says, and his blue eyes turn towards her with a determined fire burning in them, "I promise that I'll bring Sasuke back." "You idiot!" Ino cries, rushing to the bed and standing over him with a fist raised. Naruto flinches away, expecting her blow, but Ino relaxes her grip and lets the anger seep out of her system. "I don't care about finding Sasuke-kun right now, she admits quietly. In lieu of his abandonment of the village, Ino's feelings for the Uchiha are a bit twisted, and she hasn't had the time to properly sort out the tumultuous emotions. Even prior to his betrayal, the Uchiha has held a consistently shrinking part of her thoughts, being replaced by good times shared with Naruto. Don't you understand? You're my best friend, I don't know what I'd do if something happened to you. Really? He sounds a bit surprised at the revelation, though for the life of her, Ino can't figure out why. It seems relatively obvious. You're my best friend, too. And don't worry about me, I'll be okay, he smiles, and Ino finds herself reassured slightly by his infectious confidence. You better be. Then she sighs. Get some rest, I'll bring by some food for you later. You're the best, Ino-chan. She walks out of the room to find Shikamaru leaning against the wall by the door. He falls in pace with her as she walks down the hallway towards the hospital's exit. You heard that Koji's okay? Shikamaru asks. Yeah. I'm fine, too, by the way, he adds dryly, waving his splinted finger in front of her. Ino shoots him a look that says he hardly has anything to complain about. In fact, it's almost like he's looking for a reaction from her. Naruto seems really down about. Why didn't you take me? Shikamaru sighs, troublesome. Shikamaru, answer me. He fixes her with a stern look. Ino, your skills aren't well suited for direct combat. Even Neji, the strongest of all of us, nearly died, and Kiba, Lee, and I would have been killed if it weren't for the team from Suna. So you're saying I'm not strong enough? I'm saying that I had very little time to pick a team and you're not a combat specialist, he placates. There'll be other missions, just make sure you're ready for them when you're needed. The rest of the walk is made in silence, but Ino is determined to take Shikamaru's words to heart. I will be. Weirdest team ever. I think Granny's gone senile. Privately, Ino agrees with her fellow blonde, but is intelligent enough to not voice such a thought aloud, primarily because of who their teammates are. Naruto, intones Abu Rameshino, looming next to him, you should have more faith in Hokage-sama's decisions. Why? Because she would not put together a team which had no chance of completing its assigned mission. Yeah, brat, adds Mitarashi Anko creepily, appearing suddenly behind the blonde, the point of a kunai held at his cheek. Don't you like hanging out with dear Anko-sensei? Naruto can't repress a shudder at how eerie the personalities of the two shinobi are. When they return to traversing the path to the land of the sea, he heaves a sigh of relief. You should really learn to control what you say, Ino comments in amusement, but the likelihood of that is probably really small. The blonde boy shoots her an indignant half-glare, half-pout, but refrains from saying anything. Taking his silence as her victory, Ino reflects on the strangeness of the mission and the mismatch of skills Tsunade has cobbled together to fulfill its parameters. They're venturing out to the coast in order to protect the land of the sea's next shipment of money to the land of water. Unfortunately, a half-human, half-fish creature is apparently raiding the cargo ships sailing out from the land of the sea's ports, thus, their secondary mission is to neutralize the so-called demon of the sea. Though it's her first mission in some time, Ino is confident in her team's ability to complete it successfully. By the time night falls, Ino is reassessing her original estimation of the mission's difficulty level. Naruto has been separated from the group, and maybe, she thinks fearfully, has drowned, and Anko is acting strange and mysterious, more so than usual, anyway. She walks away from the dock where she and Shino have just finished procuring a boat, nerves a bit frayed. Shino is silent beside her, and Ino hesitates in confiding her fears to the reclusive bugnin she only knows peripherally. Then she considers how big a mistake prematurely judging Naruto was years ago, and concludes that perhaps it's advisable to not do the same to the Aburame. With that in mind, she hesitantly prompts, "Hey, Shino." "Yes." "Do you think that Naruto's okay?" "Yes," he responds immediately, and Ino is impressed by his faith in her fellow blonde. "Why?" "Because Naruto is a ninja of Konoha, and beside that, he is very resourceful. He will find a way to get by until we meet up with him." "Thanks, Shino. I think I needed to hear that." The bug user nods. "Of course. It is only natural to worry for one's comrades." That is what is called teamwork. In the morning, they find Naruto, as well as the demon of the sea, and though she escapes, Shino's intuition leads them to her hideout. The three genin are separated from Anko and confronted by Akadu Yoroi from the Chunin exams, who Shino claims as his opponent. Ino hesitates on leaving the Aburame behind to fight the older male by himself, but his insistence prompts her and Naruto to meet up with Anko, who is facing a man she introduces as Amichi, and the demon of the sea, Isaribi. An explosion rocks the underground tunnels, and Ino is thrown to the ground by their sensei. Naruto gets up to follow Amichi and Isaribi out, but Yoroi's teammate Misumi blocks his path and grabs him with rubbery arms. Ino scrabbles out from beneath the dirt and rocks and immediately connects her pointer finger from each hand to the thumb of the other, forming a roughly rectangular shape. Here goes nothing, she thinks. Shinran's Hein no Jutsu. Misumi's arms release their hold on her best friend and shoot out to wrap around some nearby stalagmites. Naruto massages his throat and coughs as Ino rushes up to him, Anko's arm slung over her shoulders. New technique. He croaks. She nods. The mind-body disturbance. Dad taught it to me for the Chunin exams, but, well. The invasion started before your match. Works well. Remind me to thank Inoichi-san. Shino pokes his head through the opening Amichi and Isaribi have disappeared through. We must leave, he informs them. They eventually catch up to their targets late in the morning. Shino immediately departs to engage Yoroi in combat again while Ino helps the sailors adrift in the sea and Naruto and Anko confront Amichi. Ino pays little attention to any of the fighting until a large wave sweeps over her, Shino, and Yoroi. The bug user surfaces on a rock moments later, looking utterly spent. When Yoroi reappears with the intention of finishing off her temporary teammate, Ino reacts by throwing her hands into the seal for the Shinran's Hein and activating it. The act saves Shino, but draws Yoroi's attention to her. He approaches a little too quickly for her to react, and the blonde is paralyzed in fright, but insects swarm up his body and drain him of his remaining chakra before he reaches her. Ino stares dumbfounded at his prone body before glancing at Shino. You saved me, she breathes, and she's not quite sure why she's so surprised. Naturally. This is also what is called teamwork. The mission ends shortly thereafter with the successful capture of Amichi. As they board the ship bound for the mainland to return home, Naruto sidles up next to her. Thanks again for the save in the cave, Ino-chan. I don't know what I would have done without you there. Ino waves off the praise. No, it was nothing. That is untrue, speaks Shino from her other side. You played an intricate role in rescuing both Naruto and myself during the mission. Because of this, I also owe you my gratitude. Well, you guys both saved me, too, so, call it even. Naruto nods and smiles at her while Shino adjusts his glasses in a motion Ino assumes means he finds the statement agreeable. As the three turn to watch the boat cut through the water, a single thought runs through Ino's mind. Maybe I am getting stronger after all. It's been a while since we've been on a mission together. Well, our teams don't exactly work together that often. You know that my abilities work best when Shikamaru is around to back me up. Naruto nods. That's true. Besides, since Sakura-chan's busy studying medicine with Tsunade Baa-chan and Sasuke is. He trails off, still uncomfortable with being unable to make Sasuke return to the hidden leaf. He clears his throat. Well, I'm the only member of my team really available for missions. Ino gives him a teasing look. You were the only person available for this mission, regardless of suitability. Not that I need a bodyguard. The blonde boy pouts. That's pretty mean, Ino-chan. Then he cocks his head to the side. What are we doing again? She sighs and buries her forehead in the palm of her hand. Honestly, you have the attention span of an insect. Don't let Shino hear you say that. Anyway, she states loudly, I've been hired by one of the family members of the fire daimyo who's supposed to get engaged to the daimyo of the land of noodles. We're going to get more details when we get there. That's vague. I know. It doesn't take long for them to arrive at the house of Princess Fuku, who requests Ino to be her stand-in for the meeting with Shikara, the daimyo of the land of noodles. Ino is forced to subtly kick Naruto to stop his laughter, as despite the obvious physical resemblance between Ino and the princess, the latter weighs at least 4 times as much as the Yamanaka. "Stop it," she hisses. Naruto snorts and tries to contain his laughter as Ino bows to their client. "We'll do everything in our power to make sure the engagement goes through." Several hours later, Naruto and Ino are sitting at a kotetsu awaiting the arrival of Shikamaru, and the blonde boy is still releasing muffled guffaws. "Seriously?" Ino asks incredulously, but quietly enough so that Fuku, listening through a device connected to a different room, can't hear her. "Oh, come on," he defends, "you can't tell me this isn't hilarious to you. She's like a combination of you and Choji." Ino's eyes practically ignite in flames. "Say that again," she grits out, "I dare you." Naruto puts his hands up in a placating gesture and closes his eyes, grinning disarmingly. "Haha, just a joke, Ino-chan. No need to get so upset." At that moment, a fat man with his shirt open to reveal his chest bursts through the doors, surrounded by minstrels proclaiming his greatness. Ino's jaw drops open and Naruto's lips purse so hard from restrained laughter that his cheeks puff out comically. The man flaunts himself as Shikamaru before he starts to dance around and woo Ino in an overly dramatic fashion. "It's a Koji Lee?" Naruto gasps in Ino's ear during the daimyo's flamboyant gesturing. Her lips quirk slightly at the remark, but her attention is focused more on not screwing up the princess' chance at marrying Shikamaru. Despite how absolutely insufferable Ino finds the man, she manages to get through the majority of the meeting with Naruto's, mostly, quiet help. His presence is reassuring to her, soothing in its simplicity and nearness, and she finds herself enjoying the time spent with her best friend, especially with how often he's been disappearing on missions, even though Shikamaru's presence mars the atmosphere. The mission ends up being a success when Princess Fuku slams open the sliding doors, desperate to see her revered fiancé, and reveals Ino to be a fraud, and Shikamaru finds her more attractive than Ino. Both Konoha are back on the road within the hour, and Ino is in a state of shock, moving like an automaton. "I just don't understand," she mumbles. "What's that?" "Everything I've read says that men don't like women who are built like her. It's all about females who are thin." "Thin?" she screeches. "And who would be attracted to a guy like that? A gentleman should be tall and handsome and, well-mannered." She settles on. Naruto shrugs. "What about the Akimichi clan? Koji's parents are pretty big." "But, that's..." "You're very pretty, Ino-chan," he continues blithely, oblivious to Ino turning to him, a startled expression on her face from hearing him admit such a fact, "so I don't think you'll have a problem attracting a gentleman. Besides, I don't think there's a specific type of person that all people like." He pauses and turns to face her. "You're not gonna go on a diet again, are you?" "No, you were right about how much calories we burn as shinobi," she concedes. "I need all that energy to be able to make it through training and missions." The platinum blonde sighs theatrically. "But I'll definitely need to reassess what all those magazines say." Naruto puts an arm around her shoulders. "If you say so, Ino-chan." Ino sits with Asuma at Yakiniku watching Choji eat his way through a stack of barbecued meat. "Honestly," she sighs, "you finally get the all-clear from Tsunade-sama that you're completely recovered, and you immediately come here to pig out." She shoots Asuma a glare. "You shouldn't enable him so much." Asuma shrugs. "He said he wanted to train after this. If this is what it takes for him to put in the effort, so be it." "You'll be broke within a couple of months," she warns before looking at the clock. "Damn, I gotta go." "Choji, you'll be there, right?" The chubby boy mumbles something incomprehensible through his food and waves his chopsticks in a gesture of agreement. "All right, see you soon." Ino leaves the barbecue joint and begins to walk down the road, heading for where she knows Team Guy trains. Naruto is leaving within the hour for a 3-year training trip with Jiraiya of the Chunin, and Ino is determined to give her best friend the goodbye he deserves. To Naruto, friends are the most important thing in the world, and Ino thinks that nothing will make for a better send-off than gathering all of them together one more time. Tenten is watching Lee run Guy ragged from her seated position on a tree root when Ino arrives. The blonde tells the older Kunoichi what she's planning, and Tenten promises that she'll be there with Lee in tow. Ino nods and thanks her when Tenten informs her that Neji is training at the Hyuga compound. She continues on, running into Shino and Kiba just outside the Hyuga complex, and the bug user agrees to pass on the message to Neji and Hinata. Ever since the mission with Anko and Naruto, getting along with Shino has gotten much easier, so much so that Ino entertains the idea that it's simpler to speak to him than a fellow kunoichi like Hinata. Since Sakura already knows of Naruto's departure, Ino immediately goes to work searching for Shikamaru. She finds him standing at the gate, bidding farewell to the Sand siblings, and manages to convince them to stay until Naruto comes by. When Naruto comes into sight half an hour later, walking next to Jiraiya, all of his friends are at the gate waiting for him. What you guys doing here? Shikamaru gestures with his head to Ino. She got us all together to see you off properly. Really, Ino-chan? Naruto asks in a voice that indicates he can't quite believe she's done this. Yeah, well, I wanted to make sure that you knew you had a reason for coming back, she tells him. So hurry up and get stronger. Okay. Naruto looks around at his friends, all of whom offer their own personal indication of good luck and farewell, and then focuses back on Ino. He grabs her in a hug and whispers, "Thanks, Ino-chan. I'll be back before you know it, believe it." Then, with one last wave, he walks through Konoha's great gates. Everyone disperses until only Shikamaru remains by Ino's side. He'll be fine, he reassures her. He's stronger than all of us, now it's our turn to catch up to him. Ino thinks back on all the accomplishments Naruto has managed since their graduation from the academy, his battle with Momokai Zabuza of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist and defeat of Haku the ice user, fighting with Orochimaru of the Sunin in the Forest of Death, defeating Neji, the Hyuga prodigy, in the Chunin exams, and then Gaara, a genin who had never been hurt before coming to Konoha, protecting Tsunade from the combined assault of Orochimaru and Kabuto, fighting Sasuke at the Valley of the End. She sniffles a little, unaware of when she even started crying. I know, I'll just miss him. In an outwardly uncharacteristic display of support, Shikamaru places one hand on her shoulder. I think we all will. So, she's pretty cute. Who is she, your girlfriend? Shut up, Ero-senin. Chapter 3, Blurring the Line. Naruto walks through Konoha's giant gates for the first time in 2.5 years, his mind centered on only one subject. Jiraiya half-heartedly attempts to stop him from running off, but he knows it's a lost cause. The only thing the blonde has been able to talk about during the journey home is the young Yamanaka girl, and the Toad-Sunin has filled what feels like decades by teasing his pupil about his girlfriend. Every time the topic came up, Naruto vehemently denied the claim, but as he watches the orange and black-clad back of his godson, Jiraiya knows that a time will come when Naruto finally sees the light. Until then, though, a healthy dose of blackmail will probably come in handy in the long run. Naruto practically sprints towards Yamanaka Flowers, opening the door and setting off the chiming of the bell. Welcome to Yamanaka Flowers, intones the bored voice of Ino, staring at a magazine on the countertop. How may I help you? Is this how you greet all your customers, Ino-chan? No wonder business is slow. She looks up as the familiarity of the voice resonates within her, a happy smile alighting upon her features. Naruto. You're back. The Yamanaka ducks beneath the side entrance to the counter and rushes to her friend. Naruto catches her with a laugh, embracing her tightly before placing her back on the floor. I should hope so. Otherwise this is one really cruel dream. Now arms width apart, Ino gives him a good once-over. Puberty has started its work, giving Naruto height and, if the hug is any indication, musculature he didn't possess before leaving. His voice is a little different, and his face looks leaner, but Ino recognizes the unruly blonde spikes, the orange in the outfit, and the blue of his eyes. Were they always so blue? Shining with mirth. And she realizes she's been staring far too long for what could be considered mere friendly appraisal. You've really grown, she manages. Naruto, meanwhile, also notices the changes in his best friend. Ino's hair has grown out from the Chunin exams, held in a high ponytail and back, similar to her father, with a long sweep of bangs covering her right eye. Naruto sees no practicality in the style, aside from the fact that it makes her look oddly alluring. Her outfit isn't too different, still purple, predictably, though her midriff is now revealed and fishnet has replaced the bandages as accessories in some places. His time with Jiraiya, and all the man's less reputable claims to fame, takes over, and he notices how time has influenced the girl's, woman's, he corrects mentally, body. Yeah, you, too. I'm up here, you perv. Hee, right. He scratches the back of his head in that same, embarrassed fashion he always has, and Ino rolls her eyes. Maybe she'll punish him at some other time for staring at her breasts, but in this moment, it's just good to have him back. Besides, sometimes it's nice to be noticed and appreciated, even if the method it's done in is somewhat lewd. Naruto is telling her a story of how he once sabotaged one of Jiraiya's research excursions when he's called away to go see the Hokage. He leaves, promising to return as soon as he can, and after he secures a new place to live, not wanting to continue to mooch off the Yamanakas, and Ino returns to manning the counter, a bright grin now decorating her lips. He's finally back. Wait, you just got back a week ago and you've already saved the Kazekage's life. Naruto has just returned from a mission to rescue Gaara from Akatsuki's clutches to find Ino waiting for him by Konoha's great gates, one foot tapping in mixed impatience and anger. It isn't really his fault that Tsunade assigned the mission to his team, but finding out that he disappeared the day after his training trip ended caused an irrational rise in the female blonde's ire. She intercepts him upon his return, demanding to know the details. It was pretty close though, confirms Naruto, looking skyward somberly, fingers laced behind his head. Apparently, when Akatsuki extracts the Biju, the host dies. But Chobaa-san sacrificed her life to bring Gaara back from the dead. There was a ceremony for her and Ino-chan. He realizes that his friend is no longer walking beside him, but is motionless a number of paces back, expression blank. The host dies. She whispers. Her eyes focus upon Naruto, whose features display only concern. You'll die. He laughs nervously. Me? Why would you think? Because you contain the Kyuubi. She whispers fiercely. The speed at which the color drains from his face is almost comical. His mouth works wordlessly, silently trying to ask how she knows. Ino continues softly, Tsunade-sama told us all when we made Chunin. Everyone's fine with it, though I'm mad that you never told me. Fine, of course, is a matter of perspective. Initially, shock was the biggest factor, followed by an overwhelming sadness and then personal introspection for each of the Rookie 9 and Team Guy. Neji, Shino, and Shikamaru made peace with the new information quickest, probably because they had their suspicions beforehand. Everyone else had their own way of integrating the news. Ino's method was a several-day-long ordeal, consisting of crying, prolonged lapses of silence, questions to her father, and a brief bout of self-loathing brought on by reconciling Naruto's memories from when they switched bodies with how he was treated before they became friends. After she realized that the fact that Naruto was the jailer of a giant demon didn't change her opinion of him, it was put out of her mind. Until Akatsuki made itself known. I thought about it, Naruto admits, back when we became genin. But I didn't know how you'd react, and I didn't want to burden you with that knowledge. We're best friends, Naruto. She exclaims indignantly. I know, and I'm sorry. How about I promise not to keep anything from you ever again? I'll hold you to that, she warns. After a beat of silence, she continues, I told you that I won't know what I'd do if you were gone. The words are an echo of her sentiment from almost 3 years before, after the failed mission to retrieve Sasuke. Promise me you'll be careful. He stares at her for a time, as if trying to puzzle out some riddle she's keeping hidden. Although the words are the same as the last time she said them, he feels like there's a deeper meaning behind them this time. Finally, he nods. I promise. But hey, I'm the great Uzumaki Naruto. No member of Akatsuki is gonna get his hands on me. Ino covers the giggle, threatening to escape by rolling her eyes to defuse his bravado. Don't get so full of yourself. The last thing you need is an overinflated ego. You know, Naruto says, ignoring the barb, Sakura-chan took down one of Akatsuki's members. Apparently, he was a former partner of Orochimaru, and now we're gonna go meet with a spy he planted within Orochimaru's base. If we get lucky, Sasuke'll be home real soon for you and Sakura-chan to fight over again. Ino lets the other blonde continue to talk about the mission, mind a whirl. Truthfully, she hasn't really thought about Uchiha Sasuke since he abandoned the village. Her focuses have been more on her training and making sure her boys, Shikamaru, Choji, and, to a lesser extent, Asuma, are taking care of themselves. Naruto's return to the Hidden Leaf has placed him again on that list of people Ino has taken it upon herself to look after, topping even her two teammates with how much danger he seems to be involved in. Telling him that she no longer thinks about Sasuke would prove pointless for another reason. Naruto has a strong tie to the Uchiha that Ino doesn't fully understand, and finding him is part of what drives Naruto to keep moving forward. Ino's feelings on the matter are simply superfluous to Naruto's ultimate goal of bringing him back. But with Naruto chasing Sasuke, Sasuke chasing Akatsuki, and Akatsuki chasing Naruto, it's only a matter of time before one catches the other. Ino fears that that day is far too close for her liking. If getting rid of Akatsuki is the only way to keep Naruto safe, then so be it. She promises herself that she will find a way to help take down the criminal organization once and for all. The platinum blonde nods to herself, affirming her resolution. They won't get Naruto, that's for sure. Naruto sits on a bench outside Konoha Hospital, waiting for Sakura to show up. His mind is mostly focused upon the cold words Sasuke imparted to him upon the conclusion of their last mission, but another piece of it fixates on the horrible transformation he underwent before confronting his former teammate. He senses another person sit down beside him, and turns to find fair skin and long, platinum blonde hair. Ino-chan, he voices, mildly surprised. What are you doing here? Asuma-sensei wanted to go visit Kakashi-sensei in the hospital, so he asked us to meet him here. I'm just a little early. She peers at him curiously. You don't look so good, something you want to talk about. Naruto grips his shirt over his navel and clenches the fabric. Something's wrong with me, Ino-chan, he confides quietly. On our last mission, we ran into Orochimaru, and I got mad. Really mad. I drew on the Kyuubi's power and I turned into a monster. Just like everyone always used to say. Not for the first time, Ino feels her heart go out to her fellow blonde. Seeing him so despondent and morose is just so unnatural that Ino knows she has to find a way to cheer him up. She slides closer to him and places her arm around his shoulders, and is mildly disturbed when he practically flinches away at the contact. Naruto, she says in the same soft voice he's using, you're not a monster. You protect everyone in the village from the Kyuubi. Without you, so many more people would have died all those years ago. Maybe even my parents. You're a hero. I don't feel like a hero, he murmurs. Ow. He yelps when Ino punches him in the shoulder. Ino-chan, what was that? Quit being a dumbass. You're one of the bravest shinobi I know. You've taken on countless opponents who thought they were better than you no matter what the odds were and saved plenty of lives. Just pretend that the Kyuubi is another one of those opponents. You can beat it, I have faith in you. I'm a little afraid. It's okay to be afraid. The important thing is to not let that fear control you. If something does happen, we'll help you control. No. He yells, startled. His blue eyes are suddenly wide with an even deeper terror. He takes a deep breath to calm himself down and then repeats, no, Ino-chan, if that ever happens, if the Kyuubi ever takes over, get far away from me. You have to promise me that. But. Promise me, he demands. His hands grip her shoulders and his tone is so serious that Ino finds herself nodding in acceptance regardless of how she feels. He searches her eyes for a moment, looking for some clue that she might disobey him, but when he finds nothing, his grasp on her slackens and he collapses in on himself. I have no control when the Kyuubi's in control, I hurt Sakura real bad when it happened. I won't let the same thing happen to you. Fine, but I can take care of myself, you know. He smiles joylessly at her statement, and Ino can tell that even though she's helped, there's still something else bothering him. Instead of nitpicking at it, she arches one platinum blonde eyebrow curiously, deciding to distract him. So, Sakura? No-chan. Did something happen while you were away? She teases. His face momentarily adopts a sad look different from the one he's been wearing. No. We ran into Sasuke, and now I know that she'll never give up on him. But, he continues, face lightening into a faux approximation of its usual cheerful expression, there's plenty of fish in the sea, right? Ino stares at him for a moment longer, trying to discern if there's anything else she can say to make him feel better. When she decides that all he really needs is time, she gets to her feet and stretches. Yep. And who knows, she continues, striking an alluring pose meant to make him laugh, maybe the girl you're looking for is right under your nose. The taller blonde grants her a small, genuine smile before getting up and walking into the hospital with her. She continues to see pieces of the normal Naruto breakthrough when the rest of their respective teams show up, and later, when Naruto is forced to dive across the table at lunch to prevent Sai from calling Choji fat, Ino forces herself to choke her laughter at the absurdity of the scene. She's immensely flattered when Sai calls her gorgeous, though Naruto's glare at the newest member of Team Kakashi stays with her throughout the day. Ino stands behind the counter of Yamanaka flowers, fingers deftly working on the organization of a bouquet. Her skill at arranging flora is top-notch, which is good because her mind is in a place very far away, watching blood dribble out of her sensei's mouth as she monitors the failure of his vitals. Ino, you're very confident, but, you know how to take care of yourself. Choji and Shikamaru, these guys are kind of clumsy, so take care of them. And, don't you lose to Sakura, in ninjutsu or in love. The bell to the shop tinkles, and Ino looks up to see Naruto walk in, still wearing his black funeral clothes. She notices idly that her friend looks more mature dressed in something other than his garish orange and black outfit, with blonde spikes falling into his eyes and Tsunade's necklace prominently displayed, but her thoughts are too jumbled to dwell on this particular one. He says nothing as he leans against the counter, watching Ino return to her work. How are you doing? He finally asks. At any other time, the question is so asinine that Ino is sure she would respond with some sort of snappish remark. As it is, the platinum blonde isn't in the right mindset to muster up a venomous response for her best friend. Fine. Ino can sense Naruto peering at her intently, and she briefly curses him for knowing her so well. Ino-chan. His voice is tender, as if he knows he's dealing with something very fragile, and Ino releases a sob at his compassion. It's not fair. Why did he have to die? Before she knows what's going on, Naruto jumps over the counter and is holding her in a soothing embrace. Sheesh, it's okay, Ino-chan. Just let it all out, it's okay to cry. She cries into the taller blonde's chest in a way she hasn't allowed herself to do either at the funeral or in front of Choji and Shikamaru, needing to be strong for them, to take care of them. Just as Asuma asked her to do. Asuma-sensei was a great man, Naruto says, as if she's unaware of this fact. Despite him speaking over her head, she can feel the reverberations of his words in his chest, and simply feeling his nearness comforts her. He gave me some pointers on controlling wind chakra. One day, I hope that I can be as proficient with it as he was. Naruto isn't quite rambling, but she can tell that he's talking about whatever comes to mind Asuma-related in order to draw her attention to the good times with her late teacher. She's grateful that he's doing so, if only because his talking is making it easier to focus less on what has happened. He said that, I have to take care of Shikamaru and Choji, she hiccups. Sounds about right, he chuckles. He's pretty smart to leave that task to you, you're pushy enough to keep them in line. Ow! He exclaims when Ino punches him in the gut. Don't be a baby, you know that didn't hurt, she chides, now looking him in the eyes. Her own are now dry, though there are still salty tracks lingering on her cheeks. It's a pity he didn't tell you to look after me, Naruto wishes, otherwise maybe you'd be less violent. Now you're just being mean. Maybe, he shrugs, crystal blue eyes searching baby blue ones, but you're feeling better now, aren't you? Ino is suddenly aware that they've been standing in close proximity to each other for a long time. They're near enough that it won't take much movement for them to be kissing, and if someone walks in on them, it will probably look as if they are two lovers in an embrace. She finds it strange that she doesn't care. Yeah, thanks, Naruto. He smiles at her and brushes a stray strand of hair behind her ear. That's what I'm here for, Ino-chan. I've gotta go back to training, though, I'll see you later. He kisses her on the forehead and then walks out of the shop. Ino watches him go, not quite sure how to interpret what has just taken place. When she moves her fingers through her hair, the blonde is surprised to feel a flower tucked behind her ear. She pulls it out and smiles fondly at the indigo-colored pansy in her grasp, idly wondering when Naruto picked the plant without her noticing. Maybe the reason Asuma-sensei didn't tell me to take care of you was because he knew I needed you to take care of me. Naruto and the rest of Team Kakashi, and why they're called Team Kakashi when Kakashi himself is only on it about half the time is beyond the blonde, almost arrive at the fight too late. A searing fire jutsu is bearing down upon Kakashi, Ino, and Choji, and Naruto and Yamato are forced to mix together a wind and water jutsu, respectively, to shield Team 10 from the scorching assault. The Jinchuriki glares at the Akatsuki member across the forest of dead trees, the Kyuubi's chakra flowing through his body, though whether it's because of all the chakra he's expelled in training or anger at how close Ino, Kakashi, and Choji were to death is debatable. For some reason, the latter feels more likely. The wriggling black things that are sticking out of the Akatsuki member's body pulse forward when Naruto creates several shadow clones and sends them into battle. It's mostly impulse to do so, because spawning doppelgangers is his go-to strategy when starting a fight, but the information he gleans from their destruction proves invaluable. Several more clones pop into existence even as Ino and Choji tell him that he needs backup. He reassures them that he knows what he's doing as two clones go to work creating the Raisin Shuriken. Naruto runs forward with the new technique whirring in his hand, his clones running ahead of him to create the necessary distraction. They're destroyed by the Akatsuki members' attacks, but it doesn't matter because Naruto is right next to the Nukenin with the tool to the man's destruction mere inches away. These are the bastards who are hunting me, who captured Gaara. They made Sasuke leave the village. They killed Asuma-sensei. His eyes harden as his hand thrusts forward to close the gap between the Raisin Shuriken and the Akatsuki member. And they made Ino-chan cry. The force of the technique blasts the Nukenin back several hundred feet before he's engulfed in a massive sphere of wind chakra. Naruto is already on his knees when the man's howls of pain reach his ears. His body slumps forward, but Choji manages to catch him right before he hits the ground. "That was amazing, Naruto," he says, awed. "We were having so much trouble taking down Kakuzu, and you just came in and took him out with one jutsu. You're no Shikamaru, but you can be pretty smart when you want to, huh?" "Hee, well, I don't know about that." "Damn right, you don't," Ino interrupts. "It was stupid of you to go in there by yourself." Her hands become encased in a green glow as she kneels down and places them upon her friend's back. "Your chakra is practically gone and your body is under a lot of stress. That jutsu is highly dangerous to use." "Maybe, but now Asuma-sensei's killers are gone." He turns solemn blue eyes up to look at Ino. "Isn't that what's important?" "Asuma-sensei believed that the king was important," comes Shikamaru's voice. The Nara is walking towards them, his hands in his pockets. He looks between Naruto and Ino, as if analyzing something about them that no one else can see. "I think that he'd be happy with how much progress you've made." Naruto grins tiredly at the dark-haired boy. Meanwhile, Ino stares at Shikamaru, trying to figure out why it sounds like he's referring to something completely different from what the spiky-haired blonde has asked, and why she feels like her teammate's cryptic message involves her more than it should. Ino gapes in trepidation and terror at the utter monstrosity that has risen out of the water before her and the rest of the Konoha. The Sanbi is a gigantic seafoam green turtle covered in spiked armor, with only one visible eye and its namesake three tails submerged in the water at its back. In the presence of the wild Biju, Ino momentarily loses sight of her role in the mission she has been assigned. This is the power of a Biju? And this one's only the Sanbi. The Kyuubi is a creature Ino doesn't give much thought to anymore. It's sealed within her best friend, and while the notion is mildly disturbing, she has made her peace with that little fact. In fact, the knowledge that Naruto is a prison for the fox ended up explaining all the disdain he accumulated in his childhood. Ino thought she understood what his status as a Jinchuriki meant. But staring the Sanbi in the face, the platinum blonde realizes that she comprehends nothing of what Naruto lives with. Sakura's yell brings Ino back to the current situation. She focuses her chakra to activate the sealing barrier Tsunade has created expressly for this purpose and then steps out onto the choppy water at Shizune's behest. With the Sanbi already out in the open, the searching function of the seal activates immediately, forcing Ino to distance herself from Sakura and Shizune as the binding function takes effect. The three tails immediately stills, and Ino finds herself heaving a sigh of relief that she's not about to be crushed beneath one of the turtle's massive namesakes. She shrieks when the Sanba suddenly begins to thrash about, disrupting the placid water of the lake and forcing all the members of the sealing team to release the technique. Ino falls to one knee as the loss of chakra hits her, and she takes great gasps of air while focusing on not falling beneath the water's surface. There is little doubt in her mind that should she become fully submerged in the Three Tails domain, it'll kill her, deliberately or not. Ino is only partially aware of reaching shore, and through her fading consciousness, she watches as the Sanba dives out of the water and swallows Naruto and the crystal user he's been fighting whole. Orange legwarmers enter her sight, and she can't even find the energy to berate Lee for how he picks her up and carries her over to the rest of the sealing team. She's too busy healing the boy Naruto has been working to protect, Shikamaru, she remembers absently, with Sakura to join in on the conversation her colleagues are having about how to rescue Naruto. While she's worried about her friend's well-being, she also knows that Naruto can take care of himself, for the most part, without her interference. That doesn't even take into account that, as part of the sealing team, Ino will play absolutely no role in rescuing her fellow blonde regardless of whatever plan Kakashi and the others come up with. The Yamanaka is relieved when Naruto escapes the belly of the beast early the next morning, but most of her attention is focused on making sure she is channeling her chakra correctly for the four-corner sealing barrier. A short shriek escapes her lips when a blue and white slug appears on her shoulder, but Sakura's reassurance that the gastropod is Tsunade's personal summon Katsuya calms her nerves. As the technique takes effect, Ino finds her confidence in her abilities building, and she steadily becomes more determined to seal away the Sanbi in its own realm. Just as she thinks they're about to experience success, the Biju breaks through the barrier and stirs up a deluge of waves. Ino catches sight of Sakura going under the water right before the surf hits her and plunges her into the lake's depths. For the second time in as many days, the blonde is thrown towards the shore, and though she remains conscious, probably because Katsuya has been giving her chakra for the seal, preventing her from exhausting her own, she scrapes up against a rock, opening a gash on the upper part of her right arm. The Sanbi rushes toward the cliff face overlooking the lake, and she can barely make out two brightly colored forms standing next to a more humanoid figure with bright yellow hair. She watches in stunned disbelief as her friend manages to repel the three tails by way of some sort of massive fire jutsu. The situation seems strangely reminiscent of the stories of the Yondaime subduing the Kyuubi, and Ino is surprised by how much Naruto resembles Konoha's savior. The thought of the Yondaime's fate befalling Naruto is suddenly all too real, and Ino finds herself terrified to her core despite her faith in him. Shino appears next to her. "We are rendezvousing at the cabin," he intones. "Are you capable of moving?" Ino grips her wound with the opposite hand and stands up. "Yeah, let's go." When the entire team meets back up, the three Jonin cordon themselves in the other room with Shikamaru while Sakura tends to Ino. 5 minutes later, the pink-haired girl wipes her brow and releases a breathy huff. "That's all I can do for you right now," she says. "I'm going to bandage your arm so it doesn't get infected." "Here Sakura, let me do that." Both girls look up to find Naruto standing over them. He kneels down and holds out his hand for Sakura to deposit the bandages in. She hesitates a moment before handing them over. "I'm going to look after the others," she says, standing and dusting off her clothes before moving away. Naruto begins wrapping the upper part of Ino's arm in cloth. "This'll be quite the battle scar, Ino-chan," he comments lightly. "Once I've recovered my chakra, I'll finish healing it myself." There's a momentary lapse in conversation, and then Ino prompts, "Naruto." "I'm sorry." The taller blonde looks at her, confusion shining in his blue eyes. "For what?" "That you've had to deal with something like that," she gestures outside, to where the Sanbi is residing somewhere beneath the surface of the lake, "for your entire life." "Nah, it's okay, Ino-chan. You don't have to apologize. After all, it's not your fault I've got the bastard fox stuck inside of me." He pauses briefly and then continues, "Actually, I think that I owe you." "Huh?" He finishes tying the bandage and turns his gaze to the ceiling. "Well, if it wasn't for you becoming my friend, my life probably would have been a lot worse." "But what about before we became friends?" Naruto shrugs. "Nothing we can do about that." The past is the past. You've been there for me whenever I needed you. Blue eyes find hers, and he smiles. So thanks, Ino-chan, for being my friend. Ino isn't quite sure what to say in response to that, so she speaks the only words that come to mind, "You're welcome." Naruto sits on a bench outside a convenience store, retaining a tenuous grasp on a popsicle which is melting. The news that Jiraiya, his beloved mentor, has died is still fresh in his mind, despite the knowledge being almost half a day old. He's grateful for the dark of night, which disguises the tears dripping to the ground next to the liquefied drops of his frozen treat. It's a lot harder to track you down when you aren't visiting any of your usual haunts. The blonde's head swivels to find Ino taking the seat next to him, draping her platinum blonde hair over the back of the bench as she stares at the moon. Naruto rubs his forearm across his eyes and sniffs, trying to remove any sign of his tears. I heard about Jiraiya-sama, Ino continues, voice soft. Naruto finds himself grateful when she doesn't try to sympathize with his loss by apologizing. I wanted him to see me do something great, he whispers, to see me not be a screw-up. He was your sensei, she states simply. I'm sure he was proud of you no matter what you did. And you're not a screw-up, you've done plenty of things no one ever thought you capable of. How do you know that he was proud of me? Because Asuma-sensei was the same way with us, Ino tells him with certainty. It's probably a requisite of being a teacher, to be proud of your students. She moves her head so it's resting on Naruto's left shoulder. And because I'm proud of you, so I know that others are, too. Naruto doesn't say anything, but he puts an arm around Ino's shoulders and leans his cheek against her scalp. You give good advice on benches, he says finally, referring back to when she soothed his fears about the Kyubi in front of the hospital. I give good advice in other places, too, she tells him matter-of-factly. Are you going to be okay? The spiky-haired blonde tries to shrug, but his best friend's head on his shoulder hinders the motion. Maybe, eventually. They sit in silence for a long time, simply enjoying each other's presence in the light of the moon. Ino-chan. Can you spend the night tonight? I don't really want to be alone. Sure. As they head back to Naruto's apartment, Naruto reaches out and grasps her hand in his own. She doesn't resist the gesture, and when they reach the taller blonde's abode, she disappears into the bathroom with some of Naruto's casual clothes to use as pajamas. When she finishes changing and exits the bathroom, Naruto is sitting at the head of his bed with his knees drawn up to his chest, staring morosely at his feet. Ino climbs onto the small futon and sits next to him. Someone once told me that it was okay to cry. Naruto grins weakly. He sounds very wise. Ino seesaws her hand back and forth in the air. He has his moments. Her fellow blonde tries to pout at her, but the expression comes off as more forlorn than anything else. You know, if you want to talk about Jiraiya-sama, I'm willing to listen. I know what it's like to lose your teacher. I know. I'm not ready. I understand. Silence overtakes them, and both blondes eventually fall asleep, Naruto's arms wrapped around Ino's waist in a parody of a child looking for comfort from a stuffed animal. The next morning, Shikamaru is surprised when Ino answers Naruto's door dressed in his clothes. Come on in, she beckons. So. He begins, stepping across the threshold, you and Naruto finally. He coughs awkwardly, unwilling to continue. What? No. No, he's just not taking Jiraiya-sama's death very well. Ah, and you? He asked for some company. You remember what it was like when Asuma-sensei. I know, Shikamaru interrupts. He looks thoughtful for a moment before nodding to himself. Look, I know that now's a really sensitive time for him, but I need his help. Can you get him to come with me? I'll see what I can do. Ino convinces Naruto to follow Shikamaru out, and then decides to tag along behind the boys, curious as to what her teammate is planning. Her curiosity is piqued further when the Nara takes them to meet Kurenai coming out of the hospital, and he explains his intentions to become the child's sensei. She's a little surprised to hear Shikamaru's resolve given his laziness, but his words seem to have an effect on Naruto, who allows a slow smile to spread across his face. When Naruto agrees to help Shikamaru crack the code his late sensei has left behind, Ino finds relief flooding her body. Good job, Shikamaru, and welcome back, Naruto. Shikamaru glances back at her as he and Naruto head for the headquarters of Konoha's cryptanalysis squad, analyzing her with dark eyes. His gaze reminds Ino of his assumption about her relationship with her fellow blonde earlier that morning and of his knowing look back in the forest after Naruto killed Kakuzu, and she feels a blush creep up her cheeks. What does Shikamaru see that I don't? Ino exchanges glances with the rest of the Konoha 11 as Naruto walks away from the piles of wood being used to reconstruct Konoha, his departing words ringing in their ears. That guy. Growls Kiba, I don't understand what he's thinking. Perhaps Naruto-kun has a plan, Lee suggests. Tenten snorts. Hardly. Whether he does or doesn't is irrelevant, Neji insists. He needs to accept the consequences of Sasuke's actions and understand that we will not just let the Uchiha go free. Ino turns to leave, and Shino asks, where are you going? To get answers, she replies. She catches up to Naruto part of the way to Ichiraku Ramen and strolls next to him quietly for a moment, trying to come up with the right words to say. Why are you doing this? She finally settles on asking, hoping the direct route will work. Back when we were kids, he never really treated you like that good of a friend. I don't understand your obsession with him, and I want answers. And don't lie to me. Naruto laces his fingers behind his head and gazes into the sky solemnly. Sasuke is trapped in the darkness, he tells her, and he's determined to take revenge upon Konoha. He's caused a lot of people pain, and to end the cycle of hatred, the only one who can kill him is me. If I don't, more people will just continue to suffer. I'm the only one who can understand what Sasuke is going through, who can bear his burden. He looks at Ino. Shouldn't you be sadder about this? Sakura was devastated. Ino shakes her head. That's because Sakura still loves him. I haven't cared about Sasuke for a long time now, and I agree with what Neji and Shikamaru said. Really? He nearly killed you, Naruto. Several times, in fact. He indirectly almost killed Choji, Neji, Kiba, Lee, and Shikamaru, and he joined Akatsuki, which did manage to kill Gaara, Asuma-sensei, and Jiraiya-sama. You can't possibly be so blind. They arrive at Ichiraku Ramen and sit down. Teiuchi notices that they're in the middle of a conversation, and instead of asking what they want, immediately sets to work making the noodles in broth with his best guess. I'm not, he reassures her. Look, I need you to understand that this is something I have to do, whether you get why I'm doing it or not. His blue eyes are steely with determination, and Ino finds that she can't deny him his request when he looks so seriousness and sure. Fine, she allows at length, but you know that you can rely on us if you need to, right? When Teiuchi sets a steaming bowl of ramen before each blonde, Naruto picks up his chopsticks and dips them into his meal. I know, he says, twirling some noodles around the chopsticks and bringing them to his mouth. Before he inserts them in his mouth, the blonde adds, thanks for understanding, Ino. Several drops of ramen broth splatter onto the counter as a bunch of noodles slip out of Ino's chopsticks. Ah. You okay? He manages around his ramen. Yeah, just, surprised. You dropped the chan, something you want to tell me? Naruto blinks. Oh. No, I just figured that we're close enough friends, not that we weren't before. But I never really thought about dropping it, and now that I think about it, it's, you know, not necessary. You laughing. You, she giggles. Seeing you so flustered over something so simple, that's the Naruto that I'm used to. For a moment there, I thought that you know, might. She trails off, gesturing uselessly with her hand. The spiky-haired blonde seems to understand what she's implying, for he chuckles weakly. Haha, yeah, well. He swirls the ramen broth in his bowl, looking for something to say. Hinata told me she loves me, he blurts. Ino finds it strange that Naruto doesn't grant her unfinished statement with an answer, but she chooses to accept the subject change without commenting, unsure if she wants to hear the actual response. Took long enough. Wait, you knew. She rolls her eyes. Of course I knew. Our entire class knew. When did she tell you? When I was fighting pain, he admits. She told me she loved me, and then I thought pain killed her, and then, I drew on the Kyuubi's power. I know, I felt it. Naruto turns to look at her with set eyes. What do I do? Well, do you have any feelings for Hinata? No, he concedes, and I feel bad that I don't. I mean, Hinata's a really nice girl, but... He shrugs helplessly. Hey, is that why she always fainted around me? Ino stares at him for a moment before sighing. You're absolutely hopeless. Just, tell her that you care about her, but not in the same way. She'll understand, I hope, she mutters. And that'll really work. Well, it's not exactly what a girl wants to hear, but it's probably your best bet. I think her infatuation with you will probably do the rest of the work. Okay. Thanks for the help, Ino. Anytime, Naruto. Ino stands in one of the circles all the shinobi at the shore have carved in the terrain, waiting impatiently for Naruto's arrival. The past 24 hours have been a hectic mess of emotions, and her mental equilibrium is a bit unbalanced. She and her teammates have sealed one of Hidden Cloud's legendary shinobi, and a pseudo-Jinchuriki to boot, giving her a good idea of why Naruto made her promise to stay away from him if he ever transformed, come face to face with their personal nightmare in the form of resurrected Akatsuki member Kakuzu, and been forced to fight against their deceased teacher Asuma. Not to mention the loss of life on the battlefield caused by the tenacity of the enemy. The blonde was quite worried when she found Tenten suffering from chakra exhaustion, and was sure not to let her fellow kunoichi anywhere near the banana palm fan when she learned the reason behind it. That, in combination with the tenuous white Zetsu infiltrating the Shinobi Alliance as clones situation, which led to the sitting in circles situation, gives Ino plenty of time to focus on the whole reason they are at war in the first place. Naruto. Somehow, everything always boils down to a scenario involving the spiky-haired blonde. Ino considers it a sign of how important he is, not just to her, but to everyone. After all, if Akatsuki gets its clutches on him, the entire world is essentially screwed. Ino's busy trying to convince herself that she's merely concerned for her fellow blonde, her best friend, her confidant, when he appears before the entire squad wearing a chakra cloak of yellow, white and orange-red. It's surely coincidence that he lands in the midst of the rough triangle Shikamaru, and Choji are the vertices of Orange Eyes, and she wonders why the strange chakra is changing the color, fixed upon her. Sorry I'm late. It's fine, Shikamaru assures him. We needed the break anyway. You'd take any excuse to slack off. The Nara shrugs, but there's a telling grin playing about his lips. Naruto's gaze returns to Ino. I'm glad you guys are okay, though. There's a brief lull where Ino doesn't know what to say. Fortunately, Choji decides to pipe up. Hey Naruto, shouldn't you check for any imposters? Oh, yeah. Everyone's clear here. Shikamaru cracks his back and steps out of his circle. Well, back to work, I suppose. He raises an eyebrow when Naruto remains where he is. Shouldn't you be checking the other battlefields? Other clones are handling it, I've got a minute. Ino suddenly finds her voice, she moves forward so she's standing within Naruto's personal space. I can't believe you were so stupid as to leave the island. Don't you know that we're all out here sacrificing ourselves to make sure that you stay safe? Ino. Honestly, don't you have any sense of self-preservation? Shikamaru snorts. No. Ino chooses to ignore him. She's on a bit of a tirade now, irritated at the lack of any real activity, at her inability to keep her friend safe when that's the entire purpose of the Shinobi Alliance, and it doesn't even matter that Naruto's newfound ability to detect evil intent is needed to rid the field of the white Zetsu imposters. Sometimes you can just be so irresponsible. I needed to make sure you were okay. Ino's too stunned at the outburst to respond, so Naruto takes a breath and continues on. When I found out what was happening, I knew that I couldn't let other people die on my behalf. I needed to know that all of my precious people, he corrects, but it's added on so late that it sounds a bit like a cop-out, were still alive. If something happened to you, and this time, Ino is under the distinct impression that he's talking directly to her, because of me, I don't want to think about it. So I had to check. And I'm not gonna apologize for it. The platinum blonde remains silent for a long moment, trying to digest his words. Finally, she turns her head to the side, whipping him across the face with her ponytail, and crosses her arms. Well, I'm fine. And now that you're out, you might as well make yourself useful. Don't worry, the real me's on his way to fight Madara right now. I'm gonna end this war. He leaps away, where to, Ino doesn't know, and she yells, you better come back alive, you hear me? The clone waves an arm to indicate his receipt of the message before disappearing before the squad's eyes. Way to save face, Shikamaru remarks dryly. Shut up. Please come back alive, Naruto. Ino realizes belatedly that the line defining the separation between friends and something more has blurred. It's early September, only a couple of weeks until her 18th birthday. Despite the cool autumn weather, the wind chill is tolerable, and Naruto's body leans slightly against hers for support. I'm fine, he assures her, trying to pull away. Ino scoffs. You can't walk straight. I'm not letting you try to get home on your own. But the gentleman's supposed to walk the lady home. He protests half-heartedly. Since when have you been a gentleman? I'm fine. You're drunk. Nuh-uh, he pouts childishly. Ero-sennin made sure I knew my limit. Ino sighs, but lets the argument drop, choosing not to point out the light slur of his speech or the slight flush to his cheeks. He deserves the night anyway. After years of being behind his peers, Naruto has finally been promoted to Chunin. Of course, there was never any doubt in anyone's mind that he would eventually get the title, but between Akatsuki and Sasuke causing all sorts of problems, and the repercussions of stopping them, there was never any time to conduct a proper analysis of his skills. In commemoration of his achievement, his friends decided to get together and throw him a party. Naruto was perhaps a little too enthusiastic with his promotion, downing several quick cups of alcohol, provided by Anko, who was a firm disbeliever in the drinking age, in his excitement. The platinum blonde giggles to herself. Despite the joy at finally matching his graduating class in rank, Naruto seems unaware that several of his peers have recently advanced further. Shino and Lee are both Jonin, while Kiba has attained the rank of Takubutsu Jonin, Shikamaru is head of intelligence and tactics, and Ino herself is undergoing an apprenticeship in the torture and interrogation forces. Still, she supposes that she should allow the blonde to have his moment, for now. She readjusts their positions, carefully maneuvering her arm to support him under his armpits instead of around his shoulders. You're too tall, she complains. Maybe you're too short, he returns childishly. She punches him lightly with her free hand. Jerk. Midget. She swings again, but he wriggles out of her grasp and twists nimbly away in a surprisingly dexterous movement. Can't catch me, he calls, running off kilter down the street. Ino growls and gives chase, even not completely sober, he's still faster than she is. Stupid drunk, she yells. Am not drunk. It takes 15 minutes before she catches up to him, stopped in front of a looming archway. Gotcha, she exclaims, sneaking up on him and slugging him violently. That's for calling me a midget and making me chase you around town. He merely shrugs, and she looks up at the building, recognition shining in her baby blue orbs. Hey, this is your home, he answers simply. Indeed, Ino finds herself standing in front of the main entrance to the Yamanaka clan compound. A gentleman always walks a lady home, he lectures, a cheesy grin decorating his features. Ino rolls her eyes, but smiles regardless. He always seems to have that effect on her. Thanks, Naruto. The spiky-haired blonde nods and offers her his arm. She takes it with another roll of her eyes, allowing him to walk her into the compound into her house. Ino steps up into the shadow of the doorframe, spinning around to face her fellow blonde. I'm taller, she asserts, standing on the single step and bringing her total height to just above his. Naruto chuckles, to Ino, the sound is deep and soothing in its familiarity. If you say so, Ino. Say it, she demands, stomping down with one foot like a stubborn child. The teen steps forward, bringing the two friends closer together. He raises his left hand and brings it up to slowly brush Ino's fringe of hair out of her eye, placing it behind her ear. Half of it escapes and partially covers her eye again. With the light of the moon shining down, she notices just how good-looking her best friend is, the bangs of his messy, bright yellow hair, unrestrained by his usual forehead protector, falling into his eyes and giving him a strangely sexy quality she's never paid attention to before. "You're beautiful," he says instead, voice soft. Her breath hitches in her throat. She can sense that the situation is different from every other time they've shared a moment like this. "You're drunk," she whispers, attempting to explain this strange behavior. "Nuh-uh," he replies just as quietly, the corner of his mouth hitching upward in a small, gentle smile. The previous flush of red in his cheeks is gone. He kisses her then, his hands finding her waist and gently resting there. Caught in the moment, her hands move up to encircle his neck of their own accord, and Ino finds that a pleasant shiver runs down her spine at this previously forbidden contact. The sensations that she feels are so raw, so unbelievably amazing, that she wonders why they've never tried something like this before. "Because you're best friends," niggles a voice in the back of her mind, and she begs the voice to be silent for just a little longer because this feels so good. Naruto breaks off the kiss all too soon, and Ino stares him in his crystal blue eyes, finding so much joy, fear, uncertainty, a dozen other unnamed emotions, reflected in those windows to his soul. He offers her another soft smile, a brief upward quirk of his lips, before he's gone, and Ino's left standing at the entrance of her house all alone. Ino touches her fingers to her lips, thinking that she can still feel them tingling from the sensation of Naruto's own. "Now what?" she asks aloud. She notices morbidly that there's no answer. That's it for part 1. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.